Vreme je za Catalinu Schveninger, nadam se da sam dobro pročitala. Zapravo prvo predavanje je master class koji se zove Employee Branding. Catalina je bivša globalna HR direktorka i direktorka za društveni uticaj u Data Campu, kompaniji za obrazovnu tehnologiju sa misijom da demokratizuje data veštine. Pre toga je bila Global Head of Recruitment, Employer Brand i Global Head of Learning u VODAFONE-u. Vodila je agilni plan transformacije i usavršavanje prekvalifikacije za preko 100.000 zaposlenih u 30 zemalja i osvojila je brojne nagrade za ovaj program. Svoju međunarodnu HR karijeru počela 2002. kao član programa za upravljanje ljudskim resursima u General Electricu, gde je obavljala različite funkcije na EMEA regiji. Bila je i Chief People Officer u Future Learn, platformi za digitalno obrazovanje sa preko 10 miliona korisnika. Pre Vodafona bila je HR direktorka i u T-Mobile-u. Sa velikim interesovanjem za tehnologiju pokrenula je i već sprovodi integraciju veštačke inteligencije i automatizaciju kroz HR funkciju u okviru Vodafona. Veštačku inteligenciju koristi za poboljšanje procesa ljudskih resursa i iskustva zaposlenih. Radi na eliminisanju pristrasnosti, uvođenju prethodnog skrininga zasnovanog na veštačkoj inteligenciji i pokretanju prvog svetskog programa resursa i razvoja za žene koje se vraćaju u radno okruženje. Catalina je posvećena obrazovanju i učenju, u slobodno vreme volontira kao upravnik škole i kao mentor srednjoškolcima i preduzetnicima na tržištima u razvoju. Živela i radila u 6 zemalja. Finally, Catalina, the stage is yours.
Is it on? Thank you so much, Mirjana. That was a long bio, which gives away kind of how old I am. But anyway, dobre jutro. Wow, I think you need a second coffee. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today. For me, it's a sort of homecoming, because I originally come from up the Danube, from Romania. And I lived kind of, I did my formative years there. I went to uni, and I had kind of my first job there. And then I moved to the Netherlands and then to the UK. But currently also, I love this region, and my co-founder is Croatian. So can you imagine the type of fiery discussions we have and the amount of words we use just to describe how we're feeling and how we're doing business together, right? So I think it's, if you are from the Balkans, you know. I think today I'm going to try to unpack a couple of themes that are, yes, linked to employer branding, but trying to make the theme a bit broader and talking about the importance of culture, the purpose, and then zooming into how you are building an employer brand that makes your company irresistible for talent that you want to hire in and for talent that you want to keep in the company. So that's kind of what we're trying to do today. It's called the masterclass. Blimey, we'll see about that. I'd love to spend some time having questions in the end. After my 20 plus years of corporates, you can imagine I don't love PowerPoints, especially when I have to build them and present them myself. So I'd love to actually have enough time today to have a conversation and see what's on your mind. I heard Mirjana said a couple of times the word chef. So I guess a lot of you are chefs here, right? So at different levels, you have teams, you have organizations that you lead. So I'd love to also kind of do a bit of reflection of your role as a chef, right? In building culture, in talking, communicating about your employer brand and why people should actually work for you, right? So again, my intention today is to make it very practical. I'll give a lot of examples and some theory. And my hope as well, as you heard, I've been in the learning space for a long time, and I'm under no illusion that you will remember any of that. But if anything comes out of today, it's you'll make new connections. I think there is a lot of serendipity around just sitting to a person you don't know and bumping into someone that sparks a good conversation. And why not sparks maybe an opportunity for you to change careers? You might be sitting now next to your future boss or future colleague. So take this opportunity today to actually connect more with each other. And obviously, hopefully you also enjoy, the speakers. But yeah, talking about the learning theory, you've heard about the forgetting curve, right? So the theory goes that an hour after this, you will remember 50% of most of what I said. A day after this, you probably remember you probably forget 70%. And a week after this, if you're lucky, you'll probably only remember 10%, right? So honestly, today it's more about the conversation and the connections versus, just dumping a lot of content at you, because that's not how people remember. So yeah, what I'm doing today, I'm not in corporates anymore. I'm working as a consultant with CEOs of smaller companies who don't have someone like me in-house. And I'm doing a couple of things with them. One is helping them figure out and unlock the power of the culture. What CEOs think, especially in tech startups, they think, I've got the funding, right? I'm giving people, I'm paying them fairly. I give them a ping pong table and good benefits and a nice place to work, and that's it, right? The rest happens. I have a reasonable product market fit, a good product, so culture will just happen, right? So obviously that's an illusion, and I love when the penny drops, right? Because they think they have all these ingredients, and culture will just happen organically, and it's nothing they need to worry about. So that's the type of work I do right now, and a lot of the slides I'll show today is kind of the piece of the conversations I have with people leading their companies and trying to figure out the role of culture in becoming or we're winning companies or attracting talent or winning in the marketplace and whatnot. But of course, I mean, there's so much ink being spilled on the topic of culture. You're hearing it all the time. And I bet you we are 170 people in this room. I bet you that everybody has their own kind of definition of what culture is. So instead of the second coffee, I'll get you to be doing something. And hey, it's okay to use your phone. So if you pick up your phones, I know you already own them anyway. So no need to hide them anymore. If you can just scan this QR code, then you will go on Menti, and hopefully technology will work. We tested it earlier, so I won't promise. But what we'll do right now is if you can pick 3 words, hopefully in English, because otherwise I don't understand. But if you have, if you write them in Serbian, do it, because we have the native language speakers here who will help me translate. So just, did you manage to get into Menti? Is it on? Yeah, okay. So basically, pick 3 words randomly. First things that come to mind when you think of culture. And obviously think about not your kind of, if you're cultivated kind of culture, but more what is a company or a corporate culture, in your opinion, or in your company's opinion. Well, technology is working. I'm impressed. Right, so we see people center. Well, no surprise. How many of you actually work in the people or HR function? All right, well, okay, great. We see trust, values. Yeah, interesting, atmosphere comes up. Team. Yeah, we're social beings, right? We always, the element of connectedness and building team and a tribe is really important, so it's part of culture. I see that people values in teams is kind of dominant. Am I seeing here? Everybody's really in good behavior and actually writing in English as well, great. Communication. Language, professional, communication, again, energy, I love that. There's a lot of work around energy right now, if you believe or not in that thing, but a lot of companies are embracing kind of this concept of energy at the workplace. Empowering, dynamic, trusting. I think we all kind of, we are in violent agreement that the values are at the core of culture. So when you think of culture, it's kind of values come to mind, the people come to mind, people build the culture. It's all about trusting each other, building that kind of common trust, and then collaborating, empowering, open. So you have some attributes there, and you have some words that are more like, what are the elements of culture, and what do actually, if I read it correctly, there is a couple of things prompting into what a good culture would look like, right? Because a positive culture would be a culture that's open, right? And that's empowering, and that's collaborative. Interesting. You see, there's a lot of words there. There's not just 3. So it kind of shows that we all have different views of the culture. And of course, when that's not clear, communication is not clear as well, right? So, it's always helpful to have this, short exercise doing with your senior leaders and see that you guys also have the common understanding of culture. And then next level is, what do you want your culture to be like? But I'll throw more things to you just to make it more interesting and complicated. You heard this quote, right, from Peter Drucker. So it didn't mean that strategy is not important, right? Obviously, you know, any sound company has to have a strategy, right? But I think what he meant is that a powerful and empowering culture is a sure route to get a strong strategy and to win in a marketplace, right? So, but that's kind of, you know, a code that everybody uses in the context of culture. So these are kind of the things that, you know, that you hear, you see them in an annual report, you know, in the conversation with the shareholders, with internally, with employees. So you talk about why we exist, right? What's our purpose? You talk about what we aim to achieve, right? How we actually bring our strategy to life. You know, the values that we have, you know, the things that we believe in, then how we behave every day to kind of bring those values to life. Then it's kind of culture is, as you said earlier, it's kind of the, you know, the sum of all of the above, right? It is quite intangible, right? People say that you walk in an office and you kind of smell and feel the culture, right? But it's a combination of all of these things. And a result of it, especially when you're consciously building a culture in a certain way. And then the employer brand is actually how you're intentional about the perception that you want to have, right? So what do people think of you before they join and when they join without reading what's written on the walls or on the career website, right? It's how you bring that, how you manage that perception that it's a positive way, right? And it's obviously, it's a lot to do with how you communicate it consistently, but it's also got to do a little bit of how you behave, because as you know, in the age of Glassdoor and social media, you can't get away with just calling things out on your website, right? People will know better because they will check you on social media, they have friends and family they call, right? So again, it's how you intentionally go and build that communication strategy so that, you know, you manage that perception. But as any perception, there is a part of it that you can't control. And I think Jeff Bezos said once that, you know, your brand is what people say about you or about your company when you leave the room. That's kind of how you need to think of the employer brand. But today, again, we're kind of trying to unpack and make it very simple, especially when you are a smaller company that doesn't have big budgets, you're not a well-known consumer brand. It's trickier for you to build an employer brand. But I think some of the strategies we share today might help you, because again, whether you're a small or large company, you cannot not have an employer brand. When I joined Vodafone 10 odd years ago, and they told me I would be leading employer brand, I had no idea what it was, because I thought, what is that employer brand, right? What are you talking about? That back then, it was kind of a new thing. Right now, I think every single company knows that employer brand is a thing and does something about it, especially when you fight for talent. And it's not just an HR strategy, it's a company strategy. And why is this reputation and brand important? You probably are familiar with the work Edelman does. Edelman is a PR and research company that does this kind of trust barometer research every year. And guess what? I mean, it's really sad because I think consistently in the last 10 years in the trust barometer, companies are only lower than politicians in terms of trust people have in them, right? So there's a huge dump of trust of the general audiences and employees and, you know, general public in companies, only lower than the politicians, right? What they've seen also in the last survey is that employees have become even more critical towards companies and even more demanding, especially after COVID, right? And whilst everybody says, oh, employees are our most important assets and the most important stakeholder, the reality is we're not really doing a good job in treating our employees as we should, as our most important stakeholder and customer. And as a result of that, I'm not sure to what extent the big reshuffle or trend is applicable in Serbia, but it's just crazy in UK, in the US. So 1 in 5 people quit their jobs. And where I'm actually more worried about is another 1 in 5, so 2 in 5 is actually thinking proactively of leaving the job, completely disengaged. They call it the quiet quitting. Right? So 2 out of 5 are either already leaving or thinking of leaving, right? So that's not good if your people are your best asset, right? And you need them to, to drive products, innovation, to win in the marketplace. And also 50%, and this is across all age groups, because we'll talk about a little bit different generations, are actually thinking that, you know what, if the company doesn't align with my own values and beliefs, I'll leave, right? It's not just about the money anymore. Yeah, of course, that's a big part. But it's more about, do they really align with me? And is the culture where I feel at home, right? And I feel I can belong. So there's a lot of stats, data, that if you need to convince your CEO that they need to be serious about culture and employer brand, maybe use this data to show them, right? It's not just some fluffy HR thing. It's really a business rationale behind it. And this is a practical example, right? So imagine, you are hiring. How many of you are proactively hiring right now? Okay, some of you, not a lot. Yeah, okay. So you will be hiring now or in a couple of months, right? Because whether you plan it or not, people leave, right? You have to replace them. So think about this, in the context of recruitment. If you have this very well articulated, things they will actually know about this before they sit down with you in an interview, right? So people will check you out, and you'll have to make sure that somewhere on your website you have them articulated. Because they do, as I said before, they look you up on social media, but they also call a friend or someone who worked there, and they will want to know what are your values, what's your culture, what is the job, what are you actually doing there? Are you being empowered? Are you doing innovative work? Right? So all of these things are getting really important, very practical when you actually hire people. And as I said, unfortunately, it's not like in the old days, but right now, 90% of the things they know before interview, and obviously, when you interview them, they interview you, right? It's a kind of it's a two-way process, because they want to see, okay, is this person actually demonstrating the values that they put on their website? Is my perception from before kind of, the same? Are they using the same language? Are they able to articulate this, and do they demonstrate those as well, right? So that's the moment when, the rubber hits the ground, and you need to, have this kind of communication strategy about your purpose, your culture, and the type of roles that people do in your company way before they actually come and meet you, right? And obviously, when they come meet you, that should be part of the sales pitch, right? And you should be convincing and using kind of the same narrative that you've done before, because we know recruitment is hard, right? I mean, and you need to ensure that you hire the right people, that you hire them on time, that you don't spend a lot of time looking for them. Cost of mishire is huge, right? Cost of rehire is huge again. So that moment when you actually have someone identified that's sitting in your room where you're going through that process is really key, right? And so make sure that that kind of strategy of communication happens before that moment. But what I want to make sure is that understand that employer branding is not just a front of house marketing campaign, right? It has to be grounded into your work practices, into what you're actually also doing to your own employees, right? It's not just a promise that it's up there to look attractive. It has to be consistent with everything you're doing internally. Because I think even today there's a lot of companies that focus too much, spend too much marketing money to build these beautiful campaigns and shiny videos and stuff, and you go inside and it's not that shiny, right? And I think we all know, we all have a couple of employers in our experience that overpromised and underdelivered on that. And going back on the why, you are familiar.
Nearly every day something almost happens. You've kind of got to be able to second guess the taxi in front of you or the pedestrians coming up.
I end up getting nearly hit at least once a day.
The young driver lost concentration and hit me from behind. I was extremely lucky that day. The doctor said that 95% of people that would have sustained those injuries would have been killed by them.
We're on roads that were built really 100 years ago for far less traffic.
In terms of cycling at
20 vision, protecting passengers inside the car to protect those outside too.
I think you've just got to be as visible as you can, and that's the good thing about life paint, is it makes it very hard for you to be missed.
Putting something on that will make you scream out to drivers like me is a fantastic thing.
I think cycle safety in London is not all about bicycles, it's about cars, it's about pedestrians, it's about sharing the road with other users. So it's great that a car brand has got involved to essentially help cyclists and help drivers in the end and save lives.
Before, right? They don't just send you how many plants they have and how many cars they make a year. And they have a huge workforce. They have almost 100,000 employees. And during COVID, sadly, they had to let go a lot of people. And they did it so respectfully. And they gave them such good benefits that, again, another proof point that they take this kind of for life very very well. And again, there are a lot of other companies that do smart things with people leave, but I think Volvo give them a lot of perks as well. So once you leave Volvo family, you can still have a lot of discounts at their garages and cars and things like that. So that matters. Companies decided to take a stand on topics like this or not. That's also part of the culture. You know, it's what you do and also what you choose not to do. And it's really the glue. You know, the thing that kind of brings them all together. If I break it down, there are two overshadowing principles in the deck that can seem simple but also harsh at the same time. So first they say we only hire A players here. Right? So Life is its own, he had a lot of downloads, he went viral, right? Because again, Reed Hastings made it really clear of, you know, this is what we are and this is what we're not. And if you want to work here, by the way, it will be a tough gig, but hopefully a worthwhile one, right? So, and it's very, very specific about all of these things, you know, about their values, about how they measure performance, how they want teams to look like. They're quite exposed in the last couple of months. So if you read the news, it's pretty horrendous. In obviously Silicon Valley, and everybody in tech has been hiring like crazy. Myself, I was hired in 2 startups, and all I was doing every day and night was hiring people. And what did we do now? We unhired them, right? Because we overhired, and we were thinking, oh, revenues will be as high, you know, in e-commerce as high as during COVID. Well, they weren't, right? So. And a lot of these companies now are, again, as I said, are being exposed and in big trouble, especially the way they deal with their most important asset. I have friends of all of these companies, and I'm on the phone with them a lot, and the stories they tell me, some of them get into the news, some don't, but I think the best one, it's kind of funny but sad at the same time. In the US, for a lot of reasons, but also a bit of mindset of CEOs, they let people go like this, right? You are out in a couple of minutes. You don't even, you know, you have to go, if you're allowed to go into the office and pick up your stuff, but today is your last day, period, right? So they are really, you know, strict about that. So people working at Google found out that they didn't have a job at Google when they woke up in the morning and Google Home was disconnected, right? So they were like, oh, Google Home, you know, Google, you know, whatever, put the TV on or put the heater on. And then they called IT and said, there's something wrong with my Google Home. And they were like, maybe you call HR or your boss because, you know, it's something wrong with your login. You don't have an email here anymore, right? This is how they found out they've been made redundant. And there are stories about people who've been there 20 years, right? They were the initial Googlers, right? And they built the product and the company, right? So this is, and they paid them very well. Everybody was very well compensated, but it's how they did that and how they made people feel after all these years of we are the most iconic company, right? And come and work for us because we are amazing, right? We are people-centric as well. Right, so again, there's so many horrendous stories that, you know, they will make, you know, books on how not to have, you know, people practices in your company in the future. Yeah, this was very empathetic and treated Airbnb as very well, you know, when they left, and was kind of saying the same thing as Patrick. So there are examples where you can shine as a leader even in these times and take responsibility and be empathetic. And you know, treat it's like to work there, right? That's good enough, right? You don't have to be like GE, but you know, it's nice if you can. And then I'll spend just a couple of minutes talking from my own experience. So back in the days of Vodafone, we had a bit of a philosophical debate in the company. We realized that we are absolutely not relevant to the youth segment, and youth segment, as you've seen from the stats, is really important. So all of these things matter a lot. So yeah, exit. Well, we talked about how not to do exits earlier. Exit is a big thing. I think the world is become more aware now of the importance of alumni. McKinsey, the big research, the big consulting companies, they say that make about 70% of the revenue from alumni. Right? So they treat their alumni very well. They keep in touch with them, and they generate business. So make sure people live well. You know, great Nike tagline, there is no finish line, right? It's not you're done, you know, you've built culture and then you've finished, right? It's a continuum. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, it's a long journey. Cultures get destroyed because of bad leaders. Big brands get destroyed because of bad reputation. So think about the importance of actually taking this seriously as a long journey, and you will obviously reap the fruits. And many thanks. I think we have some time right now, correct me if I'm wrong. We have some time to have questions. Otherwise, you can also connect with me on LinkedIn, mainly. Not so much on Twitter these days, but mainly on LinkedIn. Thank you. And don't feel you have to ask questions. I'm also absolutely fine if you go and get a coffee. We are here the whole day. It worked because, again, you have to try extra hard. You have to create these opportunities for people to connect, right? You have to get the technology, so they use Slack and things. You have to monitor that they actually do it, right? You have to give them things to do and reasons to be connected to every day. So especially, I think people in HR and leaders were absolutely knackered, right? Because people also appreciate the other part. It's like, look, I let you work from home because you have a little one and you don't have. We're more scared than we should have because we didn't know how to do this. And now we know that there are ways to maintain culture and even improve culture when everybody's everywhere. Think of this, what I was saying earlier about the segment of one and how you know to keep people happy, having different needs. And yeah, I think I believe AI is a sort of co-pilot. Yeah, it's so much going on right now. Everybody's either scared or, finds it funny or finds a couple of Shibovitsa, maybe it's, we can continue this conversation. Thank you.